Hey guys, and welcome back. This is part 2 of my 3-part video titled Milan, a decade of despair and hope. In part 1 we covered the first part of this decade, which goes from 2010 to the end of the 2015-2016 season. In this part we'll only be covering 2 seasons, but that's only because a lot happens in it. That being said, if you've missed part 1, please check that out. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. That'd be great. It's great to see that you are liking my content, and also the amazing feedback I got in the first video was great to see. So I'm going to continue to keep doing what I'm doing and hopefully keep you guys happy. Let's get into part 2. And we kind of had to rewind a little bit before I get started with the following seasons coming up. If you haven't noticed already, Berlusconi doesn't really want to be at the club anymore. He's put a lot of time, effort and money into the club, and I just don't think he's got it in him anymore. His company Fininvest, they're constantly bailing out the books for Milan, and I think it's about time for him to say goodbye. And he knows it. So obviously in the background, there's massive talks of potentially selling the club, and the majority of this is potentially come from China. A gentleman of the name of B. Taichable, apologies if I've massacred your name, but I'm trying over here. He comes out and he wants to buy around 48% of the club. This would leave Berlusconi still as the majority shareholder, but this is something Berlusconi just doesn't want to do. Rewinded a little bit now, but let's go back to June 2016. The season's finished, Brocchi's not doing so well, and I think everyone in Milan knows that. Everyone but Berlusconi. You see, Berlusconi was taken to hospital around this time for heart issues, and I think it was a heart surgery, and the decision was essentially made without his knowledge and without his approval that a new coach should come in. Yes, a new coach, and this is Vincenzo Montella. Previously coached at clubs like Fiorentina, Catania, Sampdoria. Montella was someone that at least had some coaching experience and someone definitely a lot better than Brocchi for the job. Berlusconi didn't want him though, and he later said in an interview that it was basically not his choice that Montella came in. So the rumours are true, Montella's the new coach of Milan and he gets straight to work in the summer transfer window. But there's still no budget for the club. The highlight of the transfer campaign was bringing in Serie B Gianluca Lapadula and loanee from Chelsea Mario Pasalic. Something that's not really going to shift the balance in Serie A and make Milan a powerhouse again. Big news though came out of the club in August 2016, but a little bit too late to affect this summer transfer window, was that the club was almost close to being sold. Fininvest, Berlusconi's company, signed a preliminary agreement for 740 million euros to sell the club to Sion Europe Sports, a Chinese consortium. This deal though, it came with a lot of smoke and mirrors. Especially as a fan, you didn't know who this company was, who the investors were. There wasn't even a figurehead of this company as well. Who's taking the reins at Milan? Who's going to be the new Berlusconi? It was later announced that the main figurehead was Yonghong Lee, or Lee Yonghong. Also, apologies if I've butchered your name here as well. Himself and a private equity fund, controlled by Sion, paid the first 100 million deposit to buy Milan. B. Taichable warned Milan not to sell to these Chinese investors, but the warnings didn't go noticed, as Berlusconi just clearly wanted out. This was a deal that was going to be finalised throughout the season and potentially going into the next summer, so we won't concentrate on that for now. We need to go back to the pitch. The season started well, with a few notable wins against Torino, Lazio and an amazing comeback win against Sassuolo. In this comeback win, a certain player who arrives from the youth ranks, Emmanuel Locatelli, made his stamp on the Milan team. He was in the heart of the Milan midfield and he added so much heart to the team. He was essentially in the spine of it, with so many young Italian players like himself, Romagnoli, Donnarumma, Davide Calabria. It was easy for him to gel into the team and really make his impact. Late in October, Locatelli stole the headlines with a fantastic goal against Juventus and a 1-0 win that left Buffon just simply stunned in his goal. It was something that, as a Milan fan, we're finally getting these wins against Juventus, and it was just amazing to see. I have to highlight though, there was a certain non-Italian player who was doing incredible with the squad, and Montella got the best out of him. His name was Suso. Suso added so much, especially to the right wing, with an incredible wand of a left foot, setting up so many goals, scoring wonder goals himself. The form wasn't so bad at this point in the season, with some notable wins against teams like Juventus, Lazio, Sassuolo. The team was doing well. I was actually quite impressed considering the budget that we had. However, in December, the team finally had its chance to prove itself. Plucky underdogs Milan played an Italian Super Cup against Juventus in Doha. 90 minutes of normal time finished 1-1 with Bonaventura scoring a header after another Suso assist. The two had amazing interplay between the left and the right flank. We went to extra time and there wasn't another goal, so it went to penalties. And I guess in penalties, it doesn't matter who you have on your team, what superstars the other team might have against what underdog stars you may have. It's just one guy taking a spot kick against one guy trying to save it. And lucky enough for Milan, we just had better spot kick takers on the day, and Mario Pasalic scored the winning penalty to give Milan the Super Cup. I know, it's an Italian Super Cup. Wow, is this all we're going to cheer about? But to Milan fans, it was something. Actually, it was everything. Finally, they won a trophy. Finally, we can cheer on something more than just the occasional win against a rival. We've beaten our long-term rivals, Juventus, in a final, who always consistently beat us. This is amazing for a fan, and I think at the time I was just in awe where the club could go, especially with potential investment coming in the summer. And to my brother who's a Juventus fan, that moment, yeah, I hope you liked it. Still staying with December 2016, we have to look off the pitch, back at the new investors coming in. Young Hung Lee was set to make the residual sum payment of the club to buy basically Milan outright off Berlusconi's hands this month. He failed to do that, which was the first of many warning signs coming from these potential investors. Rather than pay the total balance, he paid a further 100 mil, which was later found out to be from another set of investors coming into the club. See, at this point, we don't quite know what the structure is of these new owners. We don't know how many investors there are. We don't know where it's going to end up. We don't even know if they're actually going to finalise buying the club. It is kind of worrying signs, but we kind of choose to ignore it as a fan and seek the optimism. Unfortunately though, news didn't quite get better on the pitch. See, Milan had kind of like a hangover from the Super Cup, and going into the new year in 2017, the form just wasn't good. If the best moment comes from the Italian Super Cup win against Juventus, the worst moment actually comes from the same fixture, but just during the Serie A. Milan actually weren't bad this game. They deserved the draw, but annoyingly the referee didn't think so. The ref gave a last-minute penalty awarded to Paulo Dybala, which he dispatched against Donnarumma, and gave Juventus the win. The reason why it's the worst moment was because the way it stung as a fan. This was the first of many times Juventus get controversial referee decisions going against us. I guess we just dreaded playing them. As a fan, as a player, you just knew you could be at your best, but something's going to happen. Something shady is going to happen during that game where it's just breaching the balance of fairness. And at a time before VAR, we couldn't highlight this. This couldn't be shown to a ref to correct himself during the game. And we had to pay the price. And if it can get any worse, Lee once again failed to make the remaining sum in March 2017. We're going in constant merry-go-rounds of when is he actually going to buy the remaining stake of the club? And let Berlusconi just retire. Let him finish. I think we know something shady's going on at this point because Lee ends up having to get like a high interest loan from the Elliott Management Corporation, which is known as a vulture fund from America and the newspapers. You kind of know that he just doesn't have the money up front, which is kind of concerning because how are you supposed to invest in the club, especially in the transfer markets or buy it in a new stadium, if you haven't got the money to even buy the club? We'll get more into Elliott Management Corporation in the next episode, and Paul Singer becomes more of a constant figure at the club. Milan are doing okay on the pitch. Considering Montella's budget and the players he has in front of him, they're not doing too bad. It's looking like they're on course to get a Europa League spot. A notable comeback draw against Inter Milan with goals from Romagnoli and Zapata, Milan crawled its way to 6th place towards the end of the season. Sticking to this month in April 2017, the deal is finally finalised. Young Hung Lee has bought the club. Well, kind of. I mean, he's kind of bought the club, / his investors, consortium, / Elliott Management, who have come in for a certain amount of money. It's just a mess, to be honest. But at least it's out of Berlusconi's hands and we can potentially move the club forward. Internally, the new structure's been sorted. Lee Young Hung, or Young Hung Lee, is a new chairman. Marco Fassone is a new CEO. Massimo Mirabelli is a new technical director. So here we are, summer 2017. There's finally been no changes in the coach, but there's been massive changes in management. With a new CEO, a new owner, and potentially a budget to go in the summer transfer window, we need to see where this club can develop and potentially grow. With new stadium plans on the horizon, Mirabelli goes to work and getting some new signings locked in, like Matteo Musacchio, Ricardo Rodriguez, and Frank Kessie, I believe, was the first ones to come into the club. This is all happening while we're seeing a bloom of a certain youngster coming from the youth team. See, Donnarumma has had an amazing season with the club. He's actually having an amazing couple of years, but he's got 1 year left in his contract. The question is, can we get that renewed? The problem is his agent, Mino Raiola. See, Mino Raiola is obviously known to the world, and anyone who's a football fan watching this knows him. He is a super agent known for getting his players moved to different clubs just so he can get the agent fee. Mirabelli's job was to lock in a new contract for Donnarumma, which he was finding very tough considering that Raiola was wanting more money than what he was offering, and the lack of Champions League football was making it a hard sell, and I guess this thing just dragged on. With new leaks coming out with Donnarumma not wanting to sign an extension, it created a division between the fans and the player. And I didn't want this. I didn't want to see a youth team player have the fans go against him. But at the same time, why aren't you signing that deal? Why are you listening to your agent more than your heart? Unfortunately for Donnarumma, he was on international duty with the Italian youth team. He was over there with co-Milan players Davide Calabria and Emmanuel Locatelli. Embarrassingly though for him, things got a bit personal in one of the games. What was probably Italian fans and what was more than likely Milan fans managed to get into the game and throw fake money on the pitch close to Gigio's goal. This obviously blows up on social media, making him look very embarrassing and highlighting the fact that he's not renewing the club and potentially taking money elsewhere for the reason for it. So enough about this tournament. Let's go back to Milan and back to Mirabelli. He's going to town with buying so many players. Like, he signed about 10, 11 players that transfer window. Some of them obviously were kind of known, kind of not known, but I was in favour with most of these players he was bringing in. Most notably, Leonardo Bonucci. Bonucci, for some of you who don't know, at the time was one of the best defenders in world football and the corner piece to Juventus's trident in defence. He was a modern defender, spraying long balls, good in the air, and when he wasn't on the pitch, he was stopping bank robbers and burglars alike. So basically, Mirabelli gets in a ton of players and also shifts out quite a lot of players as well. We say goodbye to players like Bacca, Lapadula, Pasalic on loan, Delafeo on loan, and really bring a new structure to the club. Last thing that was left was for Donnarumma to sign the contract extension. Mirabelli finally gets us over the line. Donnarumma signs a 3-year deal, and to smooth things over, Milan also signed his brother Antonio to take the 3rd spot as the keeper. Okay, so Montella's got a new squad, new owners to back him, and a new season to start things off. And Milan start off pretty well. They win 4 out of 5 first games, but they get battered by Lazio, but things are looking good. Europa League's going well, but issues are looming. Mainly is that there's so many players that Montella has to pick from, he doesn't quite know his best team, or his best formation, or the fact that Bonucci's not good enough. Yes, Bonucci is not good enough. He is the club captain, yet is making horrendous appearances for the team. Even so, to the point that Romagnoli looks more like the club captain, or who should be it at least, whereas Bonucci's taking the fame and also the money. Montella consistently changing between formations like 3-5-2 to facilitate the centre-backs that were brought in and the influx of strikers. It really led to his demise. Players like Patrick Cutrone, who was elevated from the youth team and given an opportunity, outshone players brought in like Nikola Kalinic and Andre Silva. This somewhat embarrassed management for the players that they signed, but also put a lot of pressure on Montella to play players like Cutrone other than the players that were brought in the summer transfer window. Unfortunately, as Montella's performances as head coach got gradually worse, he was eventually sacked in November. His replacement, Gennaro Gattuso. And I say this with such emphasis because this guy resembles Milan to me. Now, my favourite players have been more skillful players like Kaká and Shevchenko. But when it comes to heart, when it comes to grit, this guy, Gattuso, resembled it for me. And he resembled exactly what this team needed. Fight, spirit, grinta. He was going to give it to them and you just knew it. You knew it. So I backed this completely. Unfortunately though, things got worse before they got better. One of Gattuso's earliest games presented itself in an away fixture against Benevento. With Milan winning 2-1 but down to 10 men, Benevento get a free kick outside Milan's box. Benevento keeper, an Italian football journeyman, Alberto Brignoli, comes up and you're kind of thinking, okay, this is normal. A keeper comes up to hopefully equalise the game. You don't expect him to... Oh, he's scored a goal, hasn't he? Brignoli scores a diving header in the last minutes of the game, giving them the draw. And yeah, we didn't lose the game, but it was embarrassing. Embarrassing as a Milan fan to see this once again. If anything can happen to the club, it will happen. Like the De Sciglio own goal, this guy scores a diving header late into the game. Twitter explodes, Instagram explodes, and once again we had a laughing stock of Italian football, European football, and I basically had to go off Twitter for 5 days because of this. That being said, performances did kind of get better. December came by and we were presented with an opportunity to get through the Coppa Italia. With a quarterfinals game against Inter Milan, Patrick Cutrone scored an extra time winning goal. And it was good. Gattuso had his players that he could rely upon. Suso, Cutrone, and also get the most out of the players that were bought in the summer, like Frank Kessie, Hakan Çalhanoğlu. Milan were on the up, and this derby game to get us through to semi-finals in Coppa Italia presented the best moment of the season. So the new year came about, and contrasting to the previous year where we had a massive dip in January, Milan went on the rise this year. They went unbeaten in the Serie A from January to the end of March. They did get knocked out in the Europa League though by Arsenal, and it just goes to show that we just weren't there yet. We weren't ready to compete on another front like that. But performances were getting better in Serie A, especially against lower league opposition and mid-table opposition, and it was something to work off. This unbeaten run unfortunately came to an end in late March against Juventus. Yes, Juventus again, and I hate them. No, this wasn't a controversial victory for them. It was a normal one. They were pretty convincing. The only thing of note was that Bonucci got a goal in front of their Curva, which was, that was pretty good. But other than that, we were just soundly beaten 3-1. The form from there was okay, and once again, Milan finished 6th. We didn't progress at all from our previous season, finishing in the exact same place and getting Europa League. We crashed out in Europa League quite early in the knockout rounds. But we had a Coppa Italia final to look forward to. Yes, we managed to beat Lazio in the semi-finals and earn a place in the Coppa Italia final against Juventus. And this was not good. See, I said they beat us convincingly before in the season, 3-1. That was convincing. This was a drubbing. Another moment where I had to turn the TV off at 4-0. And luckily it ended 4-0. Because it was just embarrassing as a fan. A lot of players had nightmare games. None more than big contract, super agent, Gigio Donnarumma. Like, I love Donnarumma. I love the kid. He's been thrown into the limelight early on at the age of 16, 15. I don't know how old he was when Mihajlovic brought him in. And he's accepted the pressure. But at the same time, I think you need to be humble. And I think he's got the worst agent for that. Donnarumma had a nightmare in this game and at fault for at least 2 of the goals. So Juventus ran out cup winners and left us dwelling on a season which was very disappointing. More so because we finally had money to spend, and the question mark was, did we spend it well enough? Did we buy too many players as opposed to getting some players of quality? I wasn't impressed by Bonucci. I wasn't impressed by Çalhanoğlu. Kessie was okay. Rodriguez was okay. The strikers were awful. Kalinic and Andre Silva being outperformed by a youth team player in Cotrone. Biglia. We brought Lucas Biglia in. Like, he was supposed to be one of Serie A's best midfielders, and he was awful. Constant injuries, he just looked slow. This was not what we expected. So evidently the season ends on a sour note, and this is also where the end of the video comes. Like I said, we're only covering 2 years here because a lot happened. And in the third part, I hope to show you more about the development of the club and hopefully coming into the hope period. So wrapping this up, I'm hoping you're enjoying this still. The feedback I got from the first video was amazing. I hope to keep yourselves entertained and keep this going because it's something that's deep to my heart. And I love this club. I love this club despite all its pitfalls, despite all its embarrassments. So until then, everyone stay amazing, stay great, and I'll see you next time.